Just in a few minutes, we'll be chatting to Italian football expert Giancarlo Rinaldi. But first up, what are your reflections on Serie A so far? But potentially, we should actually start with the Champions League. Roma against Manchester City, a 1-1 draw. A lot of people were thinking, you know, the armchair football fan were thinking, Serie A, some decent teams nowadays. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, in the last few years, you've had the resurgence of Juventus after their relegation, the scandal in 2006. And over the last couple of years, you've got Roma as well, who've become a real force. They've sort of taken on the mantle where Inter and AC Milan have sort of fallen away a little bit. They've got a newish American owner who took over in August 2012, and seems to be doing things the right way. Like, he's been putting money in, but not ridiculous amounts of money. They seem to be buying well in terms of Gervinho's just turned over a new leaf. He's a different player to what he was at Arsenal.
So annoying if you're an Arsenal.
I know, and they've got players like Kevin Strootman now, who's being heavily linked with Manchester United for big money. And they've been playing brilliant football, and they've really been challenging Juventus. Now, last season, I think they broke a Serie A record by winning their first 10 or 11 games in a row. And it was Juventus won the league in the end with a record points tally. But they're really kind of going at each other. And it was this year, they both won their first 5 straight games, and it came down to a big match in Turin the weekend before last, before the international break, a highly controversial one that Juve eventually ran out 3-2 wins against Roma.
Oh, that was a bit tasty, that one. We might get to talk to Giancarlo about that in just a second. Giancarlo, are you there?
Yeah, I am indeed.
Oh, it's lovely to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm not so bad.
Right, let's get to, before we look to Serie A, let's get to Italy, Malta. You absolutely thrashed them 1-0.
We did.
But just quickly, I think this sums it up nicely. On your Twitter last night, you said, on the enjoyment scale, I'd put that Malta v Italy game right up there with getting an ingrown toenail removed.
Yeah.
Are you still of that opinion tonight?
Yeah, I think I like to be consistent. I think it was a pretty painful experience. There are not that many games. I mean, I'm quite tolerant of pretty poor football, but it was just it was really pretty turgid stuff from beginning to end. Italy never really got going, and you do expect them, especially they had a long spell where they had 11 against 10, although Leonardo Bonucci got sent off for Italy late in the game as well to level things up, but even whilst they were playing with a man advantage, they really didn't create very much. And it wasn't just a case of Malta sitting in to defend and being very organised, although they were. It was more that just Italy didn't seem to have any flash of skill to break them down, and it was only really when Sebastian Giovinco came on, as he had against Azerbaijan, another game that was I don't know, that was more like a mild toothache maybe, and he was the only man that really came out of the 2 games with much credit. They were pretty poor performances, but they were 3 points, which is
is that the sort of prevailing opinion there? Because I believe it's three games, 9 points, top of the group. Are sort of Italian fans begrudgingly happy with Conte's start so far?
Well, I mean, he started off well, and I think fans were looking for a change from Cesare Prandelli. I mean, personally, I quite enjoyed the way Italy played under Prandelli, but I think maybe they had come to the end of the road with that style. It was certainly getting a bit predictable, and teams seemed to know how to play against that passing game. What you got with Conte initially in the first couple of games was a more energetic, a more committed approach, a bit more direct as well. There were more long balls, more crossed balls last night than you ever saw under Prandelli. But while it did well in the first games, Italy's not a country of great patience. You get a couple of games, the honeymoon period doesn't last very long, and already people are starting to question team selection a bit. But ultimately, it is a results-driven nation as well, and so for as long as the scorelines are on his side, Conte will buy a bit of time. I think Croatia are next up in the qualifiers. They sit on 9 points as well, and I think that's going to be a whole different ball game.
It's going to be a tasty one, isn't it?
I think so, definitely.
Just quickly, I may be naive here, but are Italy missing Super Mario?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? You know, I mean, he's a man who can make a difference. Although he's not been in brilliant form, you know, and he's not done a lot for Italy. He's not done a lot for Liverpool. So, you know, you could argue that there are other players. Certainly, Ciro Immobile is probably in better form. But the fact that, you know, Graziano Pelle got a first call up, Mattia Destro, you know, there are players there that you think, well, surely, you know, even just to come on and give 10 minutes and maybe turn a game. I mean, maybe Conte didn't feel he needed them for these more straightforward qualifiers. But going forward, I mean, he certainly said the door's not closed on anybody. But whether he thinks at the moment Balotelli's more trouble than he's worth, I don't know. He certainly likes players who give him a good work rate, and that's not always the case when Super Mario's in the house.
I think I heard Conte saying something along the lines of, I like players who are hungry and give everything for the team, not those who want to become famous. Slight chance that was a nod to Mario. Giancarlo, on our pundit bench here, we have Nathan, who's got a question for you.
Hi Giancarlo, how you doing?
Hi, not bad.
Alright, just a quick one. I follow Major League Soccer quite a lot, and came out recently that De Vaio is retiring this season. Has announced it quite recently. He says his intention is to go back to Italy. Is there any reception for him going back home at all? Do you know of?
I've not heard of anything that he would. I mean, he was a great player in his time in Italy, and certainly scored plenty of goals against my favourite team, Fiorentina, which made me quite glad when he actually left the country, since he seemed to find ways of getting goals against us. But I haven't heard anything as to what he might do on his return. I mean, he was a great servant for the likes of Bologna, who could probably do with some assistance down in Serie B just now. So, you know, somebody like that with his experience could be a big help to any team, really. You know, that sort of input and advice would be invaluable, I would think.
Well, maybe he'll return. And now on our pundits bench, we have Christian, who's got a question for you.
Hi Giancarlo, how you doing?
I'm not too bad.
Yes, I was at the Leaders Sports Summit last week, and James Pallotta from Roma was there, and he was talking about their plans for their new stadium. He said that he hopes that it will be open in time for the 2017 season. And I was just wondering, you know, because a lot of teams in Italy obviously don't own their own stadiums, and you've seen a problem of attendances over the years. How much do you think that model is going to be followed in Serie A over the next few years? Are more teams looking to create their own stadiums and generate their own revenues to really push on in Europe?
There definitely is a trend towards that. I mean, Juventus obviously are big examples of that, and they seem to be reaping the benefits now. And Udinese too, going down that route. I know Fiorentina are looking at it as well, and you know, I think they have to really. I was talking to somebody recently. I said Italy kind of ruled the roost in European football in the late 80s and early 90s, but they didn't really build on that success. It was all very short-term, big spending, and there wasn't a lot went into the infrastructure. And one of the key areas where they've been missing out on potential revenue, is in owning their own grounds. And they've only woken up to this pretty recently. And I think foreign owners coming in have seen, you know, this alongside proper merchandising, which is another thing where Italian teams have missed out on a fortune, because I don't know if you guys have been to many games in Italy, but outside the grounds you can buy every sort of football strip, none of them officially endorsed by the clubs, all of them for, you know, a fraction of the price that we generally pay in Britain for football strips. So, you know, the ground, there's no doubt more and more teams are looking at this and seeing that this is a vital potential source of income that they're missing out on.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that stadium in particular, because I believe it takes inspiration from the Colosseum itself.
It does, yeah.
I want to see tigers. I want to see Maximus Meridius.
Russell Crowe.
I want to see them all there. Just to finish up, Giancarlo, Alex has got a question for you.
Hi Giancarlo, how are you?
Hi, I'm good.
In terms of, you sort of touched on it earlier about how things are changing and going in the right direction. Do you think that there's maybe a little bit of a sea change going on in the league at the moment? I mean, you've got obviously Juventus doing very well. Roma are really running them close now. I mean, it's been a while since an Italian team has gone deep into the Champions League now, far too long. I mean, do you think that now we're going to see them do a bit better in Europe and maybe it's going to become a bit of a stronger team? It seems to have struggled maybe ever since it lost its fourth Champions League spot.
I think, funnily enough, the revival might come from the Europa League rather than the Champions League, because I have to admit, I'm still a bit dubious that either Roma or Juventus have the wherewithal to go really far in the Champions League. You know, I think maybe quarter-finals might be the best that they can hope for. But the teams that are in the Europa League seem to have started taking it more seriously, and there are coefficient points available in there that Italian teams seem to ignore for a long time. If they are going to start taking that competition seriously, you've got a good deputation of teams in there this time around, and I think clambering back some points is a long way to get back to third place.
Sorry, Giancarlo, we're just going to have to stop you there because we just run out of time. But if you want to read more from Giancarlo, I very much recommend his blog, which we'll put on Twitter shortly. But thank you so much for joining us, Giancarlo.
A pleasure.